Let's reset the wide receiver depth chart. That's where we start on this episode of Locked On Patriots.
You are Locked On Patriots, your daily New England Patriots podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Patriots fans? I'm your host, Nick Cattles, born and raised in New England, your New England Patriots expert, host of the Everything Pats podcast, co-host of the Greg Bedard Patriots podcast with Nick Cattles, and also a sports talk show host veteran. On today's episode, Big Mike has a big opportunity to be a big help in 2025 and how the safety position could unfold during training camp. But first, we discussed the wide receiver room. We appreciate you joining the show, making us your first listen, and for being an everydayer. The Locked On Patriots podcast, a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And as a reminder, we're going 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You get a new episode until we get back to 5 days a week, starting on Monday, July 14th. Another reminder, today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Training camp is 1 month away. 1 month away until training camp begins, and we get to joint practices. Then we move on through the preseason, and then we have football that matters. And during training camp, the wide receiver competition is one of the most fascinating elements of this football team. What will happen at that position? Who is going to stick? Who is going to go? Can we have a surprise addition to this roster? So I want to revisit the depth, and I want to start with Kayshon Boutte because Mike Giardi at BSJ recently wrote this. Boutte may be in Drake Maye's circle of trust. He worked with the ones all spring, but he did not see a lot of throws come his way. Boutte's interesting. He is an interesting player on this roster. I mean, you go back to last year, you could argue he was your best receiver, 43 catches, just under 600 yards at 589. And he had not one, not two, but 3 touchdowns, including the memorable first touchdown of Drake Maye's career against the Houston Texans down the right sideline at Gillette Stadium for that long TD. And Boutte has chemistry with Drake Maye. He established that chemistry last year. And when you talk about a young quarterback, it is so important that he trusts his receivers, that he has that chemistry built within the relationship, and that he feels at any moment he can go to his guy, and his guy is going to make a play. So there's the immediate chemistry. As you start 2025, as you get ready for camp, there's that chemistry between Maye and Boutte, and Maye doesn't have that chemistry with, just anybody else on this roster, especially at that position. Jalen Polk last year struggled, so you question the chemistry with he and Polk. Javon Baker couldn't get on the field. He hasn't been practicing with Maye during OTAs and mandatory minicamp, so you question the chemistry there. Stephon Diggs limited. You question the chemistry since this is the first time they're playing alongside each other. So Kayshon Boutte having that chemistry with Drake Maye means something, and as Giardi mentioned, the circle of trust means something. An old Bobby De Niro. The circle of trust for a quarterback. When I'm going into a battle, when I'm going against a defense that is going to be tough on me, and I've got to trust my guys to make plays, I've got to walk onto that field, and I want the guys that I truly believe have my back out there with me. And Boutte, if you look at him compared to some others, Kayshon Boutte would have more chemistry and more of that trust from Drake Maye. And if Kayshon Boutte makes this roster, of course that means he might end up bumping one of those rookies from 2024 season. Jalen Polk could be gone. Javon Baker could be gone. Both of those guys could go. If Boutte makes this roster, I would say it's likely that one of Polk or Baker is going to be out of here, no longer a New England Patriot. And so we look at Kayshon Boutte and we look at Polk and Baker, and obviously right now you would give the edge to Boutte. Another interesting thing about the wide receiver room is that we found out Jalen Polk has been banged up, shoulder injury, shoulder surgery, so he's not been out there. And meanwhile, you've got Pop Douglas lining up, not only playing the inside slot position, but Pop has also been getting reps on the outside. And that part is interesting given Polk's status right now, because that's opened the door to the Efton Chisholm talk. If Pop Douglas is going to play at least some outside, and he's not going to be restricted to the slot wide receiver position, if he's going to be moving around more than we thought he was going to move around, that opens the door for Chisholm to take a spot in the slot. And you really look at Chisholm versus Jalen Polk, because Polk's a guy that you think could move around, but in the best of worlds, he's playing inside for you. And you can't have all your guys playing inside. You need some of that versatility. So you could be looking at this really coming down to Efton Chisholm and Jalen Polk. Right now, you'd have to lean towards Baker being off this roster, Boutte on the roster. So this battle, all 12 of these receivers, we're going to talk about an awful lot over the next couple of months. It could really come down to Chisholm versus Polk. And what is compelling about that is you've got the guy with the pedigree. You've got the guy that was drafted in the second round last year. Explosive offense at Washington. I thought that Jalen Polk was going to be an immediate contributor to this offense last year. I was obviously wrong. But you've got a second-round pick from 2024 going possibly mano a mano for a roster spot with somebody who is an undrafted free agent. UDFA versus a second-round pick. And this is not a second-round pick that busted out of the league already. Yes, he had a bust of a rookie season. But a lot of rookies struggle in their first year, and then they have a little bit of a bounce back in year two. Now, not many guys can do what Polk did or didn't do in his rookie season and make a big enough leap in year two to be a consistent contributor. But still, you don't just throw away second-round picks in year two. Second-round picks have to prove to you that they have almost zero chance of bouncing back to be cut in their sophomore season. So it's going to be very, very interesting to watch this play out. It could be Chisholm versus Polk, UDFA versus second-round pick. Is Polk healthy? And if you're the Patriots, do you feel like you might be able to sneak one of those two guys onto the practice squad? I would think it's unlikely that you could sneak Polk onto the practice squad because, again, he was a second-round pick. And a team might just take a shot on him just based off his pick slot from 2024. So I think it'd be difficult to get Polk to the practice squad. Chisholm, you might be able to get Efton Chisholm to the practice squad. And that means something, because if this Patriots front office and this coaching staff feels like Chisholm and Polk are very close to each other, let's say that's the hypothetical, let's say that's the premise, and Chisholm and Polk are pretty close to each other during training camp, you might keep Polk, even though Chisholm might have been slightly better, because you think you can get Chisholm to the practice squad based off of him being an undrafted free agent. And then you get to Kendrick Bourne. And I think Kendrick Bourne can be a significant contributor to this football team. You go back to 2021 and what he did with Josh McDaniels. He could be a contributor early and often for this offense. But where does Kendrick Bourne fit? Does he fit? If you were going to play him on the inside, now you've got to look at Stephon Diggs, who was terrific in Houston, playing in the slot. I would have to imagine Diggs is going to play some football out of that slot. And then you look at Pop Douglas playing inside, playing outside. Then you look at Chisholm playing inside. I don't think he's going to play outside. So if Kendrick Bourne's fit is playing on the inside, he has to leapfrog a couple of guys. He's got to prove he's better than Pop Douglas, Chisholm. I don't think he has to prove himself to be better than Stephon Diggs because Diggs is on this roster. But Kendrick Bourne now is also in that mix, and you might be able to make it a three-way match a la WWE between Chisholm, Polk, and Bourne. And if Kendrick Bourne's not going to play the inside a lot, and you think he might be able to play the outside for you, now he's battling against someone like Mac Hollins, who you signed. He's battling against Pop Douglas and some of the snaps he's getting at that outside wide receiver position. And he's also battling Kyle Williams, who you just spent a top 70 pick on going back in late April. So this is all going to be a compelling watch. This wide receiver room, who falls into what position. I would say Diggs and Pop Douglas and Kyle Williams and Mac Hollins are your four locks right now. And then you've got everybody else fighting for two spots. Is it going to be Polk? Is it going to be Chisholm? Is it going to be Boutte? Is it going to be Bourne? Interesting stuff. All right, big expectations for Big Mike in 2025. That's coming up next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Summer sports are in full swing, and whether you're all about baseball under the lights, golf on the green, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not make it a little more thrilling? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned at the beach. You know, I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions. You get up, you can check out the promotions and take advantage of the ones that you absolutely love. And FanDuel just has fun ways to bet. Easy to use, fast to pay out, makes even regular season games feel like must-watch events. Whether you're placing a same-game parlay or watching a bet ride into the ninth inning, FanDuel makes it feel like I'm part of the action. It will make you feel like you're part of the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Big Mike Onwenu, very critical piece for this football team. A critical piece, and Onwenu needs to return to form. He needs to look like the guy he looked back in 2023 when he looked like he did in 2022. We do not want to see the 2024 version of Mike Onwenu pop up again here in 2025. When you look at last year, Mike Onwenu, his Pro Football Focus grades, his run blocking grade was 95th in the league. 95th in the league. His pass blocking grade was much better. He was 31st in the league. But overall, Mike Onwenu finished as the 51st graded guard in football, according to PFF. Now, Pro Football Focus also looks at Onwenu in what he might bring to the table in 2025, and they rank him as the 17th overall guard in football, which would mean Mike Onwenu would put together a pretty good season if he was a top 20 guy at the position. Of course, you're paying him like he's a top 5 or 6 guy, and that's what you would love to see. You would love to see him step up and look like a top 10 guard. Pro Football Focus says they've got him at 17. I've got high expectations for Mike Onwenu this year for a number of different reasons. Let's just start with the fit. His fit with Josh McDaniels, his fit within this offense should be a much, much better fit than it was last year with Alex Van Pelt and company. Onwenu was one of the guys that we would question, could he fit with the West Coast offense? Usually you see, slighter, more athletic type offensive linemen with the kind of offense that AVP was trying to run a year ago. Well, now you bring back Josh McDaniels, and Onwenu fits perfectly for what McDaniels loves to do. He loves to run the football downhill. He loves the duo concepts. That is Mike Onwenu's wheelhouse. Now, we also understand that McDaniels could run some more zone run than we've seen him run in prior seasons as the Patriots offensive coordinator, but I still feel like the bread and butter will be that downhill run game with the duo blocking concepts. The other reason why I have high expectations for Onwenu this year is that he's going to stick to right guard. One of the things that drove me crazy over the past couple of years with this Patriots team was how they handled Onwenu. They would flip him from guard to tackle, from tackle to guard, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And I don't think that was fair to the player. I don't think that he could, meet or exceed expectations at right guard, given that he was wondering, am I going to play tackle next week? Now, I know that Onwenu would tell all of us, and he would say to the media, that really didn't bother him. He wasn't too worried about it. He's just going to go out there and play. But that has to mess with you. That has to mess with your psyche, with your mentality as you're going out there. You're flip-flopping positions. You can't get comfortable in one spot and just do your best in that spot. And we all know that Onwenu is a better guard than he is tackle. So this year with Morgan Moses and Caden Wallace and Vidarian Lowe and Will Campbell, this year, Onwenu should stick at right guard. He's been there throughout OTAs. He's been there throughout mandatory minicamp. Now he has been limited due to a hand issue, a hand injury, but it sounds like he's on his way back. And I would expect him to be your day one right guard. And I don't think that they will move him around. And when you look at Onwenu, when he's been able to play at right guard, you look at some of his numbers, and he's been really good. I'll give you an example. Pro Football Focus wrote this about Onwenu. When lined up at guard over the past 3 seasons, Onwenu has generated a 77.9 pass blocking grade. That is the 5th highest mark among qualified guards over that span. Mike Onwenu has been the 5th best pass blocking guard in football over the last 3 seasons, according to PFF, when he has been at right guard. He's been one of the best in pass protection. It's when he goes to tackle and his grade suffers a little bit that causes that wavering. But if we have Onwenu at right guard from day one, throughout camp, throughout the joint practices, we get to the season, week 1, Onwenu's out there at right guard, I think he's going to do a very, very good job, because that's what he's done for the most part when he's been able to be comfortable with his situation and going out there and playing his natural position. I also think the coaching staff, Doug Marrone, Jason Hoteling, Robert Kugler, I think you've got 3 good to very good offensive line coaches. That should help Onwenu. And I would just have to imagine that Onwenu, he's going to be carrying a lot of pride into 2025 because of what happened in 2024. He can't be happy with that. He signed that contract. He knows what the expectations were, and he just was not good enough at certain points last year. He's got to be better. He knows it. I know it. You know it. And the importance of Mike Onwenu, it cannot be overstated. Because if we're looking at this offensive line, one of the questions we have is on the interior offensive line, and whether or not they'll be able to pass protect at a high level. Garrett Bradbury, as we know, he's had all sorts of issues in pass protection. He was one of the worst last year at his position, protecting the quarterback. So you've got the center questions when it comes to pass protection. Left guard, we don't even know who's going to be playing left guard until we find that out. That's going to be a question, if that guy is going to be able to protect Drake Maye well enough. So you have these interior offensive line pass protection questions. To have Mike Onwenu be at right guard week in and week out, that should help you tremendously. At least you have one of those 3 spots filled adequately, and you feel pretty good about it. You also want Onwenu at right guard because let's not forget, Morgan Moses is 34, 35 years old. He's coming off one of his toughest seasons, and you want some stability on that right side of the line. And Onwenu can be that. You need that anchor. And I think Onwenu can be the anchor on that right side, and he can be one of the anchors of this offensive line. You certainly hope that Will Campbell is another anchor at left tackle. And one more thing about Onwenu and why I think he's going to be a critical piece and he's going to be good this season. One more thing about him, his contractual status. Now, I know he just signed that extension last offseason, but here's the thing. It was a 3-year deal, and the Patriots actually have an out on his contract. This season is over. The Patriots can get out of Mike Onwenu's contract. They can get rid of him, and it's only a $7.5 million dead cap hit. So if Onwenu wants long-term security, he needs to play good football. And if he goes out there and he plays that good football at right guard and gives his team consistency and plays like a top 10 guy at his position, then the Patriots are not going to cut him after this season. And as a matter of fact, the Patriots might want to rework his deal and get him done for a long-term extension. He turns 28 years old in December. So it is more than possible. Onwenu puts together a good season. He goes out there and plays his best football. The Patriots, with that out in his contract, that might open the door for them to go to Onwenu and say, let's work on something more long-term, because you are our right guard of the future. We still feel you've got 5, 6, 7 good years left. Let's get something done because you proved yourself more than worthy this year. So I think Onwenu is in line for a big season. He's got to stay healthy. But there are plenty of things about the 2025 season that make me feel that Onwenu can step up and step up big. And this Patriots team, they absolutely need it. They need all the good O-line play that they can get to help Drake Maye. So Mike Onwenu, interesting player on this roster for 2025. The Pats have something when you look at interesting decisions. They got some of those to make at safety as we get ready for camp. That's coming up next as we continue with today's episode of Locked On Patriots, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Safety play in 2024 was a huge issue. The back end has to be much better in 2025. When we think about last season with Drake Maye and that defense and how they fell well short of expectations, a big part of it was giving up gigantic plays in that secondary. Lack of communication. How many times did we see in the red zone lack of communication between cornerbacks and safeties, guys blowing coverage inside at the 10-yard line? We saw that so many times last year. It made me sick. And so the safeties have to be better this season. For this defense to play better, they need the safeties to play better. So let's look at that position right now. As we get ready for training camp, we are 1 month away. You've got Kyle Duggar, you've got Jabrill Peppers, you've got Marcus Epps, you've got Craig Woodson, you've got Jalen Hawkins, you've got Del Pettis. So by my count, you got 6 guys. I would not put Brennan Schooler in the safety room anymore. That was an experiment last year. He did as well as you could hope, given the circumstances, but I don't think we're going to see a lot of Brennan Schooler running around in that secondary in 2025. So Duggar, Peppers, Epps, Woodson, Hawkins, Pettis. Those are your 6 guys. Let me start with Kyle Duggar. And it's a very simple question. Is he healthy? Last year, he was not healthy. And it absolutely made his season a disaster, which we'll get to in a minute. But he has to be healthy. He played through injury last year, wasn't nearly the same guy, had the tightrope surgery to the ankle once the season was over. And now we wonder, can Duggar have a bounce-back season? Last year, the numbers, as I mentioned, they were terrible. His coverage grade was 164th, according to Pro Football Focus. 164th among safeties last year. His grade was 34.8 in coverage. And the eye test would tell you that. He was downright brutal in coverage. His run defense, though, that was also really, really bad. Usually, if you see Duggar struggle in coverage, it's not necessarily stunning. But to see him struggle in not only coverage, but also run defense, again, that tells you about the injury. He was not fully capable of getting downhill and making those one-on-one tackles. His Pro Football Focus grade run defense-wise was 133rd. He was literally one of the worst safeties in football last year. His overall grade was 158th. So that's not hyperbolic to say that he was literally one of the worst at his position in 2024. And I think a lot of that, again, had to do with the injury. I'm not telling you that Kyle Duggar is a top 3 safety, top 5, but he is certainly better than the player we saw last year. And so can he get back? Because he really hasn't been involved in the OTAs, mandatory minicamp. When we get to training camp in a month, is Duggar going to be out there? Is he going to be taking reps? Is he going to look like the same guy? Just as I mentioned about Mike Onwenu's contract, it's interesting because Kyle Duggar also has an out after the 2025 season. The Patriots can cut Duggar, and it would cost them $9 million of dead cap money. But that contractual out, just like it's there for Onwenu, is there for Duggar. So this is a big season for Duggar. He knows what happened last year. He knows he has to show that he is capable of being a good safety in this league to survive on this roster. He understands the contractual ramifications if he has another season as bad as last season's, or if he doesn't show that he can bounce back, if he's laboring with that ankle all throughout the season. He's 29 years old. We got to remember that Duggar, he was drafted as an older prospect. And so he's 29. This is a huge year for Duggar. Can the Patriots rely on him? We'll see. And then you got to ask whether or not you can play Jabrill Peppers and Duggar together. Now, I know we saw that in 2023, but with this defense, Mike Vrabel, Terrell Williams, secondary coaches, with this defense in particular, does Vrabel think that you can play both guys? Is that the plan, to play both guys? I would think so, because they haven't cut either one of them. There hasn't been any trade talk. Now, maybe they want to just get Duggar back on the field, and then you might hear about some trade talk, or this guy's challenging that guy, and maybe they got to get rid of one of those two. But if they feel like they can play Peppers and Duggar together, and I would say Peppers is more the coverage guy out of the two, and you would play Duggar closer to the line of scrimmage, because Duggar, again, he has struggled mightily in coverage in stretches of his career, and last year was really bad. But you've got Peppers, who turns 30 in October. So Duggar's 29, Peppers is going to be 30 in October, and just like, stop me if you've heard this before, Jabrill Peppers, just like Mike Onwenu and just like Kyle Duggar, he has an out in his contract. The Patriots can cut Peppers after the 2025 season, and it will only cost the Patriots $3 million in dead cap money. So they can easily move on from Peppers after this season if that's what they want to do. Peppers knows that. So I think we talked about Onwenu, having a lot of pride in the job that he does, and he's got to be much better this season. And if he wants some long-term security, if he wants to stay here in New England, he's going to have to play well, because he's got that out coming up. Same could be said for Duggar and Peppers. And it's going to be interesting to see how that unfolds. Will the pressure get the better of them? Will they step up because of that pressure? Will Peppers and Duggar prove that they can play alongside each other in this defense, and they can play alongside each other effectively? I've got some pretty big expectations for Peppers, because I think he is a perfect fit for this Vrabel defense, and I think his mentality is exactly what Vrabel and Williams want from their defensive players. Duggar, I'm not totally sold on. I got to see him out there playing. And then the other thing we look at in this safety room is who is going to play free safety. Is Peppers going to play some of that role? Are you going to have both Duggar and Peppers closer to the line of scrimmage? Are they going to split some reps? One playing on the back end, one playing closer to the line of scrimmage. If you're not going to go with one of those two guys playing a decent amount at free safety, then you've got to look at some of the other dudes in this room. Craig Woodson, your 4th-round pick. He had a really good OTA. He had a really good mandatory minicamp. Everything that I've read, pretty high on Craig Woodson. Looked like he was very comfortable in this defense. So is Woodson going to be your free safety? Marcus Epps, who you signed to a 1-year deal. He's coming off an ACL injury and surgery. Is he going to play free safety? That battle to me is Woodson versus Epps. Maybe Del Pettis gets involved, but I think you're looking at Peppers and Duggar as your main two guys. You see if they can work alongside each other in this defense when Duggar gets back physically. And then you've got that next level of Woodson versus Epps for free safety. Del Pettis right on the outside looking in. Maybe he gets involved with some reps as well. Now you wonder, how many safeties will the Patriots carry in 2025? They carried 5 of them last year. But remember, you could play some games with Brendan Schooler. Will they carry 4? Will they carry 5? If they carry 4, I think Hawkins is out, and I think it's likely going to be Pettis out. Maybe try to slide Pettis to the practice squad. If they carry 5, Jalen Hawkins is out, and I think you have Peppers, Duggar, Woodson, Epps, and Pettis as your 5. And I think Woodson is going to win this job. I think he's going to end up leapfrogging Marcus Epps if he hasn't done so already. And the main rotation you'll see is going to be Duggar, Peppers, and then Woodson floating in and out. I think you're going to see a lot of that this year. All right. That wraps up this edition of Locked On Patriots. Reach out to me on Twitter at NickCRadio. Don't forget to throw a comment in on the YouTube channel. And don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe as well here on YouTube. And thank you for making Locked On Patriots your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. Hosts Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great day, and we'll see you on Wednesday.